Hello and welcome. I am Steve Clemens, editor-at-large of The Hill. Thank you for joining us for Revitalizing America's Cities, an in-depth discussion on micro businesses and their impact on cities large and small. I'd like to thank our sponsor, GoDaddy, for its support of today's conversations. In the past year and a half, we've seen cities across the U.S. experience the economic fallout of COVID-19, and it's been tough in some places. While the pandemic exposed many weaknesses in our economy, it also uncovered new strengths. Many Americans started micro businesses, which are online businesses with fewer than 10 employees. These new ventures helped them find a new avenue to economic mobility. As cities look to rebuild in a more inclusive and resilient manner, what role can these micro businesses play? We're going to be turning to mayors from across the country to help us answer this question, as well as micro business owners themselves. Before we get going, though, a few housekeeping notes. You can tweet us at The Hill Events using the hashtag #TheHillVentures. We're broadcasting live and we'll take your questions throughout the program. As with any live stream, you could experience a little trouble with the video, but refreshing the page should, in most cases, fix the problem. We're starting off the program with a message from our sponsor, GoDaddy. Please welcome Aman Bhutani, CEO of GoDaddy.
Steve, thank you, and it is wonderful to be back. I'm especially excited for such a diverse set of mayors on the panel today, collectively representing over 800,000 micro businesses within their cities. Last September, I had the pleasure of being on this show with Steve and introducing the everyday entrepreneur, the incredible people behind the 20 million micro businesses GoDaddy supports across the US. They are the focus of our Venture Forward study. The Venture Forward dataset is helping us understand this population in a way policymakers never have before. Because these micro businesses are either too small or too new, most operate below the radar of traditional methods of economic tracking. And not only have they largely been hidden from view, but as we learn more about them, we see that they are very different from the small businesses we incorrectly group them with. 9 out of 10 of these micro businesses have fewer than 10 employees. 5 out of 10 are solopreneurs. All are online, and 75% serve customers beyond their local communities. Through Venture Forward, micro businesses can now be accurately studied: where they are, what is influencing their success, and what do they need. When I joined Steve, we were fast approaching one of the most challenging phases of the COVID-19 crisis. But these everyday entrepreneurs, even then, showed their optimism, creativity, and resilience in the face of what became a very long winter. Now, 9 months later, we can see just the kind of impact these micro businesses had on our communities and our economy. Here's the quick answer. Micro businesses helped our communities withstand the worst of the pandemic. And today, I am excited to share with you new data from millions of micro businesses that shows the extent of the positive impact. More importantly, I will also share our lessons learned on how these small but incredibly mighty micro businesses help protect our communities and can now build them back stronger. Let's take a look at the economic impact of micro businesses. Even before the pandemic, we knew micro businesses were making a positive impact in communities across the country. Adding one micro business per 100 people to a community drives up median household income by about $500. In a typical community, 2 jobs are created for every entrepreneur running a micro business. Those are impressive numbers. But then the pandemic hit, and we wondered what would happen to our beloved micro businesses. The pandemic forced thousands of small businesses to close. These closures hit the low-income population especially hard, with unemployment amongst this group rising significantly. What helped mitigate the impact? Micro businesses. During the pandemic, when we looked at communities that had a higher number of small businesses and a higher number of micro businesses, low-income job loss dropped significantly. Why? Well, let's take a closer look at the data. Nationally, the Federal Reserve estimates that during the pandemic, there were an additional 200,000 small businesses that closed compared to the prior year. However, during that same period of time, there was a massive influx of new micro businesses created. In fact, we saw 2.8 million more micro businesses start up in 2020 than in 2019. What we witnessed during the pandemic was micro businesses stepping in where small businesses struggled, helping to alleviate some of its worst economic effects. Furthermore, in April 2020, every US city reported a decrease in credit and debit card spending. But beginning in May, cities with above average micro business activity began to show signs of strength through increased credit and debit card spending, while cities with below average micro business density continued to show declines in spending throughout the year. Micro businesses lowered the rate of low-income unemployment because they made local economies more resilient. They boosted consumer spending. They provided a path for brick-and-mortar small business to stay in business. And they provided an additional gateway for low-income earners to continue to participate in the economy. The data clearly shows that micro businesses are an important source of economic strength and resiliency. And after sharing this data with policymakers, we're often asked how cities can best support their growth. I grew up building software, and we knew if we did not make the technology user-friendly, it would never reach its full potential. The same can be said for how cities must approach supporting micro businesses. Keep your policies, funding, and programs as centered as possible on the real needs of micro businesses. So here are 4 things that you can do, reflecting what we have learned are the most important needs of micro businesses. And I will share with you how I remember them with the acronym USER, spelled U-S-E-R. The U is for understanding because it all starts with understanding that micro businesses are not the same as small businesses. Their risk tolerance, capacity to comply with regulations, and size of revenue make them different. To get to the best outcome for these micro businesses, we need to understand that they are a unique economic force. The S in user is for skills. Broadband is table stakes for a healthy ecosystem of micro businesses. But to thrive, we need skills training in the form of access to low-cost curriculum, experts, mentors, and coaches. These skills turn broadband into broad-based, equitable economic activity. The E in user is for expenses because micro businesses often need less than $5,000 for a few expenses to get started. Securing these small loans is among the top 3 biggest obstacles to starting a micro business. Why? Well, the level of bureaucracy required to secure a loan, even a small one, is too complex for most micro businesses to handle. And finally, the R is for resilient. Micro businesses are often about bringing the additional paycheck into the household, boost the income to pay for gas, groceries, or a much-needed vacation. We need to look beyond typical metrics of job creation and size of raw income dollars and remember that the success of micro businesses is actually about the resilience they bring to our local communities. My goal today is to encourage all of us to be user-friendly to micro businesses. With a greater understanding of what micro businesses need to thrive, we can all do a better job of supporting them. As I close today, I want to share with you what GoDaddy is going to do to partner with cities as you seek to build back stronger. We are pledging our help to you in 3 areas. 1, we recently launched a new city portal on the Venture Forward website. On this portal, policymakers can get an immediate view of micro business change across their cities. With the city portal, we're lifting the veil on micro businesses and the impact they have on your local economy. 2, we have worked directly with over 40 cities to train thousands of everyday entrepreneurs, helping them launch their own micro business. Over the next 18 months, we expect to train an additional 10,000. And third, we want to do a public-private partnership between GoDaddy, NGOs, and local governments aimed at helping U.S. cities build back stronger from the pandemic. We will pilot this new program in 5 cities and bring digital training, entrepreneurial courses, access to funding, online tools, and dedicated support. The program was conceived based on hundreds of interactions with U.S. cities and our ongoing work with the U.S. Conference of Mayors. This is the beginning of what we hope will be a long partnership between GoDaddy and U.S. cities, making our communities more user-friendly for micro businesses. Please reach out to our team if we can be of help. We'd love to work with you. Steve, thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Aman. And I just want to highlight something very important in what we just heard. Micro businesses are almost like antibodies. They're almost like the things that enable a system to stay healthy, to stay nimble, to stay resilient. And they're not on a lot of radar screens because they're operating at a level so much. But these small micro businesses, which sometimes get, grouped into becoming small business, there's something else going on, and we're going to explore what that means. And now I'd like to welcome our powerhouse panel of mayors and micro business owners to explore this further. A really big welcome to Jim Brainerd, mayor of Carmel, Indiana, John Giles, mayor of Mesa, Arizona, David Holt, mayor of Oklahoma City, Daniela Levine Cava, mayor of Miami-Dade, and I just want to say our heart goes out to the mayor and the citizens of Miami-Dade for everything that community's been going through right now. Brandon Scott, mayor of Baltimore, Nan Whaley, mayor of Dayton, Ohio. We could run the country just with these folks here. And our 2 great business owners who also happen to be GoDaddy customers. Natasha Williams is owner of the Miami-based Natasha Nails, and Denise Laurel is the owner and hairstylist at Denise Laurel Hair Studio in Baltimore. It's really great to be with all of you. So let me tell you, this is like Hollywood Squares, and it's really fun to do this. I have an obsession with the innovation that is happening in America right now that a lot of folks are not seeing, because it is I don't know whether they call it a micro level or it's on the side level, but you've got people going out with their ideas, taking risks, putting together, getting online, and doing this. And I just want to start with our friend in Miami-Dade, Daniela Levine Cava. Mayor Levine Cava, tell us how these businesses pop up on your radar screen as you begin looking at the importance of ventures in the Miami-Dade scene. How do you see them, and what are you doing to either support them or help attract them?
We are a small business economy in Miami-Dade County. It's clearly the backbone. And of course, COVID has just put a sucker punch into all of it. And we have worked really hard over the past year and a half to bolster them. And in my administration, which is now 8 months old, we've created a small business support called Strive 305 with virtual and physical space as well for micro businesses. And we even created a revolving loan fund using federal CARES dollars. We have small mom and pop grants, they're called, that go out to our small businesses. But the technical assistance and shared space is very, very critical. So that was part of my plan coming in as mayor. Look, we are going through this horrendous Surfside building collapse, and the businesses in that area have of course been affected by the changes in the traffic and so on. And the Small Business Administration showed up on scene and has been providing really tremendous help along with FEMA and our State Department of Emergency Management. So I just want to give a little shout out there to the federal and state sources as well that come into play when there is a disaster. That's terrific. I mean, before I jump from you, Mayor Levine Cava, when you're out there talking to venture owners and those people trying to risk, what do you feel they most need? I hear from some of them, it's not always finance, or it may be a quality of life in a community. It may be understanding
What other kinds of benchmarks are out there? You talked about workplace provision and whatnot, but when you talk to them, what is the array of needs that they have that you as a mayor are hearing?
For sure, technical assistance, mentoring, coaching, again, the shared space, the shared financial help, help with their websites, their marketing. Again, going back to COVID and the pandemic, everybody had to adapt really quickly. If they had a place that people went to, now they had to go online. Of course, they had to put up barriers to protect people with social distancing. So everything that we could do, technically speaking, to support them was huge. But also, you've got to have a good transportation system so people can get to the jobs. And we're in the process of upgrading our public transit and procurement reform, helping them to get access to contracts, for example. And we have a very strong commitment to our small businesses to bring them in through different mechanisms by dividing up contracts into smaller pieces, providing them hand-holding as they navigate that business application process. So, it's really from soup to nuts, everything that they can use. And again, this is the lifeline. So we need them, they need us, and together we can keep our economy going and growing.
Well, thank you. Well, we know your city well, and we know you're doing great things there. Now, I also happen to spend some time in Oklahoma City, and we have Mayor Holt from Oklahoma City, who is, I think there was a spate of time where you began seeing Oklahoma City, not to make the other mayors jealous and whatnot, but it was like one of the great startup cities in the country, one of the fastest growing economies in the country. But I have to say, Mayor Holt, that I'm sitting here in Washington, D.C., and again, coming back to this question of awareness of ventures and how it kind of changes the equation with resilience and nimbleness in a community and gives options. That's, I think, the real story that I've seen in the Venture Forward study, is that those communities that have really embedded ventures growing and whatnot are able to weather storms much more than those that are not. But they also change the character. And I know you've been working on, and I think it's called One Oklahoma City or One OKC, and removing barriers to the divisions in a city. But tell us a little bit about how micro businesses are on your radar screen.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first challenge, of course, that's still front of mind for all of us has been COVID, which really was a setback for everybody, but even more so for minority-owned businesses and very small businesses that were just getting started. And so that's why when we were out there trying to save our small businesses, we did special efforts just for minority-owned businesses. So we were big enough, and there's a few cities on here that had that opportunity, like Mesa with Mayor Giles, to get CARES Act dollars. And so because we were big enough to get CARES Act dollars, we had some neat flexibility about a year ago. And here in Oklahoma City, we created a small business continuity program that gave grants to all small businesses. But we also focused in on minority-owned businesses to get them through the pandemic with a special program, a set aside just for minority-owned small businesses. And, we got with our chamber, we got with the Black chamber, we got with the Hispanic chamber, we got with all the different arms of the city that we possibly could to reach out in the community and make sure that these businesses were aware of these resources, were going to take advantage of them, and ultimately could survive, so that we can build the economy, the equitable economy that we want to build, that every mayor on this Zoom wants to build in their city. And we're a city that's got plenty of diversity, but we don't have diversity in our economy from a human sense. We're hopefully always building diversification in our economy, something very important to a historically oil and gas city like ours. But we want to make sure that we have a new generation of African-American business owners, of Latino business owners. And we're a city that's 60% non-white under the age of 18. So we can't continue to have an economy that's totally driven by white people. And look, I speak as one, although I'm also registered Native American, but I'm mostly a white guy, and we've had a good run in Oklahoma City, but we've got to make sure that we have economic opportunities for everybody. So that small business program through the CARES Act dollars is one example. We've got lots of work going on at the chamber. I host a roundtable with CEOs talking about diversity and inclusion every month. We've got new developments where we're pumping public dollars into in Northeast Oklahoma City, which is our historically African-American part of the city. So this is definitely top of mind for Oklahoma City here in 2021, and I'm very proud to be a part of those efforts.
Well, that's an incredible story. I'm going to jump in and bring one of our business owners in a minute, but I want to first jump to Mayor of Baltimore. I'm in Baltimore is just a real close throw from where I'm sitting right now, and Mayor Scott. When it comes to your plans, I mean, you're a new mayor and you've come in. You've got with us right now Danielle Laurel. I want to talk to Danielle in a moment. But when it comes to, I mean, I have to tell you, Baltimore has so many strengths, but it also has some very bleak realities where you can go to different parts of greater Baltimore and have a 20-year difference in life expectancy. You can have the realities of what needs to be both done and undone in Baltimore. So I don't want to make you responsible for all of that today, but I'd love to hear when you're kind of interacting with the private sector and small business and these new ventures that are coming on, where do they fit? And do you find more opportunities there than many of our viewers might understand?
Yeah, and thank you for that. And I think that we have to understand, first, let me say, Denise runs a fabulous small business. We have to understand, first, Denise runs a fabulous small business in my neighborhood. But when you think about Baltimore, you talked about the two Baltimores. I always say that it's the Baltimore that everyone knows, and then there's the forgotten Baltimore, and that's where I come from. Baltimore, of course, is the birthplace of what we know as redlining legislation. And our administration, what I am doing is working to undo that. That's why we're going to invest in a lens of equity in every single thing, in every way that we operate as a city. It's going to take a long time to break down those decades of disinvestments in certain communities, mostly Black, but brown communities and poor communities in Baltimore. And when you think about the businesses in Baltimore, we have 12,500 businesses, yet the vast majority of them, 93% are small firms with less than 50 employees, and even 52% of them have fewer than 5 employees. And that doesn't, of course, count the sole proprietor business with no employees. And we have to help them grow and help our minority-owned businesses grow in the city, which right now is only capturing 12% of the revenue. That's why we're doing innovative things. Just yesterday, we celebrated the first cohort of Boost, which is Black-owned and operated storefront tenancy program for downtown in Baltimore, which is a great place for people to come. But Black businesses didn't operate in downtown, especially on storefronts. And to have that innovative program be able to lift those businesses up is going to help. We're also a Goldman Sachs 10,000 small businesses city where we're helping women-owned and Black-owned companies in ways that we haven't before by giving, as you heard from the mayor, giving them that technical assistance. That access to capital is also important for them, making sure that the city is meeting their needs just like they meet the needs of any major company that's here in Baltimore City. And when you think about the pandemic, as the mayor said, and think about the devastating impact that it had on businesses across the country, we were very particular about making sure that our Small Business Assistance Fund went to help businesses that we know typically didn't get help from the city. And we're very proud to say that over $3.5 million was awarded in small grants, with 74% of that money going to minority-owned business, 68% of that going to women-owned businesses, and a full 73% of the grants were made to businesses owned by Baltimore City residents. We're going to continue to do that great work and help our small businesses grow. We're redoing our procurement practices in Baltimore to make sure that we are more open to small businesses, women-owned businesses, Black businesses, businesses operated by Baltimore residents that hire Baltimore workers to be able to participate in that so that we can see our city become the greatest version of itself.
Well, that is very inspiring, but we're going to, kind of pressure test this with one of your constituents. We got Denise Laurel here, and I should also mention, Natasha, that both of you have a great opportunity here. Should you want a franchise, you've got 5 U.S. mayors online right now who may be very welcome, in kind of taking you as you kind of take new versions of yourself and go national to a lot of these other countries. But Denise, I'd love our audience to hear a little bit of your story, because I have some of it that during this period you've done hair webinars, you open your salon with not loans and cash and kind of put this forward. And that, you want to see more micro-businessing networking events. I don't want to speak for you, but I want to hear how you brought this into being. How did the online dimension of what you're doing take hold? And what would you like to tell our mayors about how to make it easier or more fruitful for people on your kind of journey?
So, when I started doing hair initially, I was about 16. So from then up until now, it's really been a task. But when COVID hit, not only was it a lot for me, but it was a lot for everyone. So really quick, I want to highlight something that I feel like people overlook, especially during COVID-19, was mental health. COVID-19 took a toll on mental health because it was a change for everyone. It was a change for everyone, especially speaking for business owners. Business owners, we have to handle a lot. We have to handle owning a business, our personal lives, and trying to keep afloat with everything. So for me, just handling business and everything, it was just really a hard task.
I want to ask you how, what would you like to tell our mayors in terms of your journey in coming on? So you outlined, mental health needs and support is, part of the story that you have. But I think one of the things we're getting at is to understand, as somebody who's kind of creating these ventures, what your story is actually, I'll tell our audience, it's happening all over in almost every pocket of the country, rural, urban. We have a mix of mayors here today. But I'm interested in the world from your view and what we need to know about what would have made it easier, or maybe you needed the obstacles. I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I kind of want to hear so that our mayors and that the folks watching today who are trying to understand what is this new kind of business creature out there that I got to tell you in Washington we don't know how to deal with yet, but it's very important. Well, I'd love to understand from you, and then we'll get to Natasha in a moment, about what we ought to be thinking about what you need and what you would like to see your peers be able to do in your community.
I definitely needed the obstacles. I also feel like going from being physical, especially like being a hairstylist behind the chair, going to online, it was really great because it gave me the opportunity to experience something new. Also, not just the opportunity for me to experience something new, but for my consumers, people that took my webinars. Also, another thing is when it comes to just sometimes when you're in your career field, you get used to and you get comfortable with doing something specific. For me, it was literally just standing behind a chair. So COVID-19 brought something out of me that it was an uncomfortable state, but it was something that I really needed, not just for myself, but for my business.
Wow. Well, let me jump to Mayor Giles, John Giles of Mesa, Arizona, another great city. And I think one of the challenge here, I'm going to go back to some interviews I've done in the past. I interviewed a woman named Alexa Hirschfeld, and she and her brother co-founded an online company, I'm sure all of you know it, called Paperless Post. And it was in New York City. I don't know where it is now, but she said the thing that most mattered in terms of going to New York City before New York City had lots of startups was quality of life, of looking at the opportunities, what you're going to do with the workforce you were bringing in, and other dimensions of this ecosystem that became important. And really at that time, I have to say honestly, I don't think they were on New York City's mayor. But Mayor Giles, I know that those factors, that ecosystem, are hugely important to you. Can you share with us how you sculpt the environment and then hope to attract or seed into it the kind of businesses we're talking about today? What are the highest and most important investments you're making?
Well, thanks, Steve. We have seen a lot of growth in our community. We are in the Sun Belt, and we're challenged before, during, and after COVID, frankly, with the nice problem of managing growth. I think we've weathered the storm better than most. We recently were ranked one of the top 5 cities in the country for business reemergence, and I think that's, again, we fall back on the strengths that we were blessed with, prior to COVID. But in my mind, what COVID did was really just amplified what our strengths and our weaknesses are, both as a local government and as a business community. As a local government, we had to very quickly pivot from being librarians and Parks and Rec employees, to being folks that were managing help centers and filling people's cars with food boxes. And the same was true in the business community. Those businesses that could quickly pivot and become technically savvy, or figure out how to modify their businesses in ways that align with the realities of the pandemic, they were very, very successful. During the pandemic, we opened 6 new restaurants and 6 new retail stores in our downtown area, which shocked us, frankly. So I think you do have to double down, on your strengths, and you need to quickly address your weaknesses. Our weaknesses are the same as I've heard the other mayors discuss already today. Mayor Levine Cava talking about the importance of technical assistance. We discovered that our business community, that the digital divide not only was a reality in our low-income neighborhoods, it was a reality in our business community. A lot of our small businesses really needed some very basic technical assistance to be literate and to communicate with their customers. But I think we've done a reasonably good job at that.
Well, thank you for that. I want to bring in, because I know she has to leave, but Mayor Levine Cava, just for a quick comment on that. And again, looking at these, when I think about infrastructure in this topic, I think about workforce training, I think about perhaps incubators, I think about networking events and, building contacts and relationships for a lot of folks that are just getting started with an idea, getting online and trying to sell it. And just, I'd love, before you go, and I want to thank you for your time, because I know how much stress there is in your community right now. But as we are thinking about, if another city out there wanted to replicate some of the ways in which you're looking at micro businesses and giving them support, what would be some of those elements that you think could be copied if folks were watching this show today?
Well, thank you. And it's great to hear from other mayors. And I've had a chance to be with Mayors Whaley and Scott on previous Zoom calls. So we're getting to be part of a friends network here. And Natasha Williams, let's talk, because you're in my town and I need your help.
We're going to Natasha next.
Yeah, I'll have to stay tuned, because I'm sure she has a great business, and I've been on site in Surfside for 3 weeks, and I'm in need of her services. So let me just say, it's the technical assistance, as we just heard, that is so critical, and we're doing it virtually. We're all getting pretty good at this virtual thing, as well as in person. So it's going to be a portal with a curriculum, and so there'll be learning opportunities, and there'll also be matching. They'll be pairing experts with micro businesses around their specific needs, and then physical co-working and maker spaces countywide that we will be supporting. And we also are going to be launching a major economic development initiative that will cover what does the new economy look like. We fortunately have a lot of people moving to South Florida, seeing that lifestyle matters when you can work virtually. And so we want to be sure that our small businesses are part of that pipeline. We want to be sure that our local residents have the requisite skills and training to get into these future jobs. And we want to be sure that we have a green tech economy, not just a tech economy. So we're exploring all kinds of resilience and equitable ways that we make sure that these disasters, these tragedies create an open door. And I want to just end with, we are so fortunate to have this American Rescue Plan. We are going to be spending a good bit of it on infrastructure projects that will benefit small businesses and the local workforce. And hopefully we're going to get the American Jobs Plan too, and continue to build out our infrastructure. So I think that this moment in time, they always go together, tragedy and opportunity. And we're going to make sure that we do it in a way that will lift all boats and be a rebuilding more equitably and more resilient.
Well, thank you, and thank you for all you're doing. We're going to jump to Mayor Brainerd in a moment, but before that, I want to bring Natasha up, because Natasha is one of your constituents, and Natasha, you've got a very unique business and a unique story. I'd kind of like to know what the origin story is, but also how the online dimension of it works. Like, how is that synergistically? And as you look, people tell me you're super successful. What can people learn from your example so they can go off and copy it?
Well, my background is in dance. I'm actually a professional tap dancer, and I teach for Armor Dance Theater, which is a wonderful program that services students in the inner cities. So we have outreach programs. And When COVID hit, all of a sudden I was teaching from home and there was no more hours spent commuting, and I just had a lot more time. There were no more performances, no performances for my students. So I always loved doing nails, and I actually developed an allergy to acrylic nails and gel nails. I developed contact dermatitis, which I had no idea what that was till I began doing research and found out that a lot of these products, have toxic chemicals that don't affect everyone, but they affect some of us. So I quickly decided to start making my own, which turned into the thought of let's sell them. I went to GoDaddy. I found natashanails.com open, which I thought that was a sign, because how is that name and website available? So I booked that right away, and I locked that website down. And I found that GoDaddy was really easy and user-friendly at creating the online business. And so it's not a traditional salon where you're going to get your nails done. This is something that you get in the mail and you do it at home. So I found it was really convenient for a lot of people, especially during COVID, or if you wanted to save money. So it was just something that I needed, and I thought other people would need as well.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's interesting, and I want to bring in our two other mayors real quick, and then we'll just kind of go all around. But Mayor Brainerd from Carmel, Indiana, Mayor Whaley from Dayton, Ohio. As we kind of talk about how a city, I don't know how to put this. I'm just going to put it out there. But as we talk about building resilience and economic resilience after a very, very stressful 18 months, I have to tell you, in Washington, we were doing this, and I've talked to senators and congressmen. I've been trying to get the reality of what's going on in the micro business sector on their radar screen. I know it is on yours. I'm just interested in how you sell this so that it becomes sort of a natural part of your own governance and interaction in your city, and what it's going to take for the federal level to be more attentive. So let me start with Jim Brainerd. Jim?
Well, I think one of the things that we have to think about as local elected officials, and we generally, I think as a body, haven't done a good job of that, is all the obstacles that we have built in at the local level. Forget about the federal level for a minute. The obstacles we've built in at the local level to micro businesses. Over 50% of our population in the United States lives in what we would consider a suburb, well over 50%. But and many of these neighborhoods have been developed with single-use zoning, so that you don't have the corner stores that were built years ago, small spaces where someone could start a retail business. We also tend to have zoning codes that have minimum areas for a retail business, usually 4,000 to 5,000 feet. We'd easily change those codes to say the developers have to put in something 1,000 or less square feet, but we generally don't allow that. We require separate restroom facilities in each small retail space. We have so many requirements that tilt the scale to the big chains, the big franchise businesses, really at the expense of many small, what I would call mom and pop businesses. We often have single-family residential zoning codes that prohibit home occupations, don't allow one or two employees to come to somebody's home to help on a business. Sometimes we allow homeowner association covenants to be put in place when a new neighborhood is built that further limit the ability of someone to do business in their homes.
Well, Jim, let me jump in real quick. Jim, have you been able?
I think at a local level and say, okay, how do we make our own local ordinances more friendly to small micro businesses?
Well, Jim, I would say, have you been able to roll some of those back in Carmel?
We have. We allow home occupations. We allow up to 4 people, even residentially zoned areas. We don't allow, when a new neighborhood is being built, a HOA or homeowner association to put a covenant in place that prohibits home occupations. As we do redevelopment transactions throughout our downtown area, requiring developers, they're always after city incentives. So, okay, the quid pro quo is we want a portion of this development to be reserved for small businesses, small footprints that a small micro business can afford. So we've tried to do these things. We try to create opportunities for neighborhood stores and not do single-use zoning everywhere in the city.
Right.
So all these things make a big difference. Rents are probably the most, I don't know, Natasha, what percent of your revenue do you pay in rents? I bet it's a big percentage.
Right.
If you're doing nails in a typical retail establishment, how do we lower that cost and allow small businesses to operate in smaller spaces legally? We've done a lousy job of that in the United States.
Well, that's fascinating. I mean, I want to jump to Nan Whaley, because Nan Whaley is also, as I understand it, president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, one of my favorite organizations. So I love talking to mayors. So there's just much more of a dexterous, high traction feel with what's going on in communities. And, where I think, Jim, you were talking about some of the regulatory environments there. We have David Holt from Oklahoma City. We have Nan Whaley and others that have programs that actually help provide grants and incentives and whatnot in the microenterprise area. So, Nan, I wonder if you could share with us how you approach micro businesses and think about their importance, but what they deliver and how, from a policy perspective, what we can do, because I'm convinced that having lots of them creates greater economic resilience. We've seen a lot of hardship in the country, and I feel very thankful in some parts of the country that we have had these micro ventures. But you've been out proactively trying to do it. David Holt has been proactively out providing funding and support for these ventures at lower than 10 people in the company. But tell us your story in Dayton.
Well, I want to thank you for having this conversation between mayors and micro businesses. And for cities like Dayton and cities across the country, that's where we really see this potential for our future growth for our economy. I think most cities recognize that their success is not going to come from a magical company moving into our communities. It's about building our communities, building our businesses from the ground up. And so you have to get these seeds going and really be as flexible as possible and also support them, like Mayor Brainerd was talking about locally. I think for the federal government, the best thing we like to say as mayors is like, look, help us get resources, but then let us make local decisions to really move for what's best for each and every community. And what may work in Carmel, Indiana is certainly not necessarily what's going to work in Baltimore, Maryland. And so having flexibility for these communities to really grow. And look, there's so much incentive for local communities to fight for small micro businesses to start, because those are the future businesses of growth. I'll give you one example. One of the largest employers in the city of Dayton is a company called CareSource. CareSource actually started in a hospital closet of our hospital around how to do a better job around manage Medicare and Medicaid. So one person in a hospital office grew to a company that is now over 2,000 people, 3,000 people in 8 different states now. That's the kind of ingenuity you need, and you need to have the support both from government, but also from the rest of your small business community and your regular business community around this entrepreneurship work. I also want to point out what Mayor Scott said, which I think is really important. During the pandemic, we have seen significant challenges for our small and micro businesses, particularly for businesses that are owned by women and people of color. And so really paying close attention as we come out of the pandemic. I hear mayors talking over and over again about how they can use their ARP funds to really focus in on the place where we've seen the biggest stress coming out of the pandemic is really important. But I think for as president of the Conference of Mayors, we will always advocate for a great partnership with the federal government, but letting us make the decisions where the best place is, which is on the ground.
Well, I'm going to ask our mayors real quickly in group. One of the things that I found disturbing, and I may have it wrong, but kind of disturbing, was when you looked at the scale of some of the money that was issued to some of the largest corporations in the first rounds of PPP. Any one of those giant grants would have been transformative for an entire city of small micro ventures who only may need $1,000 or a couple $1,000 to help get launched, started, get things going. And I'm just wondering if you think as mayors, we need to invert how we think about investment as Mayor Scott just shared. So I'd just love to kind of talk to our mayors real quickly and say, you know, when it comes to providing that kickstart, are we collectively doing enough? Let me ask Mayor Holt first.
Well, no, and that's why we're having this conversation. I don't necessarily begrudge the structure of PPP. I mean, everybody was hurting at that time period, and everybody needed help. And just because you work for a big company didn't mean your job was any less valuable. But as we move forward into more of a recovery and less of a triage, yeah, I think that it's always natural that our efforts be targeted at those who are building something, and those who have built something obviously need a great regulatory environment and a great tax structure and any other way we can support them, but maybe they don't need quite the same level of incentives that you do when you're just getting started. So I think that's natural, that should be where we are focused. And as Nan and others have said, you know, it's today's small businesses, today's micro businesses are tomorrow's big businesses. And so it's an investment that we're making when we do that. And it's usually one that pays off.
Mayor Scott of Baltimore?
Yeah, I think that Mayor Whaley said it. We know that the pandemic impacted these small businesses, women-owned, minority-owned businesses more in a much desperate way, because we know the existing inequities that already existed. And my grandma would always say, when you know better, you must do better. So we know that we need to be investing in these more. And that's what we have to do. We have to be very intentional. This is why we were very intentional about reaching out to those businesses. And what our job is as mayors, to make sure that we are advocating, working with our congressional delegations, working with our president, who believes and understands the importance of cities and understands the importance of small businesses and business ran by people that live in these jurisdictions. And we have to all invest in it. We all have pension funds, all these private folks who have it, you know, nonprofits who have funds to invest. And we should be investing in these businesses, because we know we have to undo all the disinvestment or ignoring of these people and places that have happened. And we have to do better by them in order for us to be the best version of ourselves.
Right. And Mayor John Giles of Mesa?
Well, amen to what's been said. More than half of Mesa's 13,000 businesses are small businesses as well. And we were grateful for the CARES Act money that we were able to distribute nearly $5 million over 500 small businesses in Mesa. So yes, I mean, businesses large and small are important in all of our communities, but we need, it's up to us as local government folks to be advocates for the smaller businesses that don't have the clout in Washington, D.C. for sure.
Well, thank you for that. And then I want to go back to Mayor Whaley, and to just punctuate this, and then we've got Mayor Brainerd. Just get a quick slice. We're almost near the end of the program, but I also want to get a question in from our audience. This has been such a cool conversation. Not enough time. A lot of people, Hollywood Squares. But Mayor Whaley?
Yeah, I think what everybody said is exactly right. You know, look, I really think what's important, one of the best things about these micro businesses for our cities is they really take the ingenuity and the creativity of our communities and flavor of our communities and create something very special. And so that's one of the best things about America is the different cities and how they are different, and they are not cookie cutter. And so the micro businesses also, you know, generate this uniqueness that makes something so quintessentially Pittsburgh, or, you know, quintessentially San Diego. And I think that small business and that work that local communities do and local leaders do with their small business makes America so very special.
Jim Brainerd from Carmel, I'm going to give you a quick moment on this too.
I'll be brief, but I think it's important to recognize that the vast majority of the U.S. workforce works for what we would call micro or small business. And it really is the engine of our economy in many ways. And all the other mayors were right. David Holt was right when he said that, and Mayor Giles was right when he said that everybody was hurting in the middle of the pandemic. We needed to give everybody a hand up. But as we move forward away from triage into rebuilding our economy, those big companies are going to be just fine. The best thing we can do, I think, for our local economies and for the people that inhabit our cities is to help those small businesses and make sure they have opportunities to succeed and be prosperous, and employ people and grow.
One of the interesting things, I've got some data on the number of micro businesses versus, that as registered as small businesses according to the U.S. There are about 3 times as many digital micro businesses as registered small businesses. We've got 45 million of these businesses across metros in the United States, over 800,000 across various counties and stuff. When you kind of look at them out there, but I want to go to Natasha and to Denise real quickly as we kind of close out, and then I'm going to get one quick question in and just ask, in your own experience, if you were going to go out and replicate yourselves or look for things in an environment that you think would help create more versions of small businesses like yourself, what would be most helpful? Natasha?
Well, what Mayor Levine Cava said about having a place where small businesses can find all the information they need in terms of grants and registering tax information, registering your business, things like that, that's always super helpful. And then brand awareness events, so that way people could learn about your company. Because if you have a good product or service, people will continue to come back. It's just a matter of getting everyone to know about what you offer and what you have. So as many of those things as possible, having the mayor's help behind us, these micro businesses, is wonderful.
Well, great. And Denise Laurel, your thoughts on I don't want to have direct competition right next to you, but in terms of, other companies that are micro ventures in yours, what would be the secret sauce for other people out there that would help, percolate this more quickly and more rapidly, do you think, from your own experience?
So just to piggyback off of Natasha, I feel it's the same way. Definitely networking events. There's so many stylists in the Baltimore area, the DMV area, that I don't know and don't know me, which I feel as though would be best. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Which I feel it would be best for us all to come together, find resources, help each other, share information, and things of that nature. But I believe that that's super important, because during the pandemic, it was a lot of information it was a lot of resources that we didn't know about, a lot of information that we didn't know about. So that would be great.
Well, listen, I've been hogging the whole conversation myself, but I'm going to take one question from our audience who's watching. Frank Knapp. Frank?
I'm Frank Knapp, President and CEO of the South Carolina Small Business Chamber of Commerce. What role can cities play in small business startup loans that lenders view as too small and too risky, even if they are guaranteed by the SBA or a city?
So that's fairly specific. Let me just go to our mayors real quick, as fast as we can. But Mayor Holt, your thoughts on that?
Sorry, I had to unmute. I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Well, the question is basically, what role can cities play in small business startup loans that lenders view as too small or too risky, even if they're guaranteed by the SBA or even by the city? So I think it's a technical question around what can we do on the finance front to get more resources for startups of this sort.
Well, obviously, cities' first priority is always going to be these core services that our residents rely upon, like police and fire and streets and trash and parks. And so when you pit those services against financial support for small businesses, you kind of know usually who's going to win that battle. But I would encourage mayors to, if they're not already, to think about creating new pots of money. And we've done that in Oklahoma City. We twice have gone to our voters for an economic development incentive, because we kind of have to have everything approved by the voters here in Oklahoma. And in 2007 and 2017, our voters have approved that. And so when opportunities come along that are more of an economic nature and less about core city services, we can go with a clear conscience
Right.
to those buckets and draw upon them. And so I think you really have to carve out something that is specifically for small business support or business support in general, and then you've got your mechanism in place.
Thank you very much. Let me just go real quick to our other mayors. Mayor Scott, quick thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think the mayor hit the nail on the head. The cities have to be innovative and invest in those businesses. I think we've created special funds here. We're going to look at doing more important partnerships and also applying pressure to our financial institutions here and figuring out ways that we can invest directly to come around to a point where we're investing in these businesses and increasing the likability that other folks will do the same.
Jim Brainerd of Carmel, and I need to tell our audience, Carmel, I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong, Jim, but you've got to have one of the fastest growing cities in the country. What I'm reading here says you've grown from a population of 25,000 to over 100,000. So small city, but it's growing like insanely. You're going to need a state soon, your own state.
It has grown quickly. It's been a lot of fun to watch it happen as well. But, I think this is an opportunity for mayors to get together and talk to our federal representatives about making the SBA a little bit more friendly towards these small businesses, as opposed to each of us trying to come up with our own program. I think there's a lot of things the Small Business Administration could do. And here's where I suppose where we define small businesses differently than micro businesses. Mm-hmm. What's the SBA doing for micro businesses? Not a lot. So we could help them understand what these micro businesses in our cities need, and then work together, the SBA as partners, to create some good national policy.
Thank you. John Giles from Mesa.
Well, I just think on a philosophical level, we need to remind ourselves we all spend a tremendous amount of time and energy on economic development in our communities. And as important as attracting new businesses, even more important is retaining and strengthening our existing businesses. So we do try to work very closely with lenders in our community, but also as a community, we build infrastructure targeted specifically at supporting small businesses. We have incubators, we have entrepreneurial studios incorporated into our universities, again, to provide technical and financial and physical infrastructure assistance to small businesses, which, as we've all will agree, is the backbone of our economy.
And let me just jump to Nan Whaley, and finally, Nan, I'm going to give you the final word on this, but as you answer, I also would love to just know, in your world of the Conference of U.S. Conference of Mayors, again, an outstanding organization with really has an incredible power and network, and you see the innovation going on in the cities. Is this question of how to incentivize, create an environment that becomes very positive for the further development and expansions of micro businesses and micro ventures? Is that something that you're going to create a programmatic element in the U.S. Conference of Mayors?
Well, it's something that the conference talks about quite a bit. And actually, we have a group that is chaired by Mayor Ginther of Columbus called Mayor Metro Economies. And that work is really about what can we do to continue to grow the economies of our communities. And this micro business work is a key part of it. I think Mayor Brainerd's right. The SBA needs to pay attention a little more to smaller businesses. The federal government definition of a small business is less than 500. And, in Dayton, a business that has 500 people working for it is a pretty big business. And so really thinking of these businesses that are 50 and less are really the bread and butter of our communities. But I think cities can do a lot too. The question that the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce member mentioned, Small Business Chamber of Commerce, mentioned, is true. This is where we can really have the flexibility of local government to really invest in these micro loans that can make a difference, especially if they're backed. So we see this not only in our partnerships with our CDFIs, but we could do that even more directly. And we hope with the American Rescue Plan's final rules, we'll be able to do more revolving loan funds that are in for these micro businesses. I know mayors across the country are clamoring to make that happen.
Well, listen, I got to know Aman Bhutani. He happens to be this is a separate, I'm not very nice to him because he did, but I became fascinated by the studies that GoDaddy had done in partnership with the University of Iowa, Arizona State University, and UCLA's Anderson School on what was going on in this ecosystem of innovation and business around the country that was just simply not on the radar screen of Washington. And it's one of the reasons I feel very strongly about raising this. And I love the fact that we have with us today Natasha Williams of Natasha Nails. Go there. Denise Laurel of Denise Laurel Hair Studio. And what an outstanding array of mayors. Nan Whaley, mayor of Dayton, Brandon Scott, mayor of Baltimore. Got to get up there and meet you up there. David Holt, the mayor of Oklahoma City. John Giles, mayor of Mesa, Arizona. We're very happy to have had Daniela Levine Cava, the mayor of Miami-Dade, and of course Jim Brainerd, the mayor of Carmel. Thank you all so much for joining us for this conversation today.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Well, that brings us to the end of our program. A really big thank you to GoDaddy and to all of you attendees for joining us for this discussion. If you missed any of the conversations, you can catch it all up on video on our website. We'll get it up there real shortly. I'm Steve Clemens. Have a great day. Be well.